Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms, and of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com. Hey Axel, so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for your time. How's your weekend going?
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, it's going really good. Thank you. How's your weekend?
Good. Yeah, I live in the southern part of the U.S., so it's been hot down here. But it's
Wow.
mid July, and you can't really expect anything different. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
I can say the same. Here it's been stormy and rainy and cold.
oh, okay, all right. Do you usually stay? I know you're from Iceland, right? And I think you reside there now. Do you usually stay there pretty much year round, or is there a time where you're like, I'm not gonna stay here?
Yeah, and I kind of stay here as much as I can, especially with touring and recording. I've been recording in the UK a lot. So yeah, I travel enough with work, so I try to stay home as much as I can.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Um, so just out of curiosity, I guess you just released an album earlier this summer, which we're going to talk about, obviously, and you tour a little bit, like you just said. I think you just came back from a few shows in the UK. I guess what as your personality and kind of what gets you up every morning, is it more about the touring and getting in front of your fans or people that have never seen you, or do you get more value and more inspiration from recording and the recording process and songwriting and stuff?
Yeah, I would say the recording process and the writing process is probably my favorite. And yeah, I try to spend as much time in the studio writing as I can. And yeah, I just really love getting deep in the music and spend time with the songs and kind of figure it out. It feels like something I need to rediscover within myself when I start a new project. So especially because I want to start a new fresh sound, and I'm exactly at that period now because I try to do it as soon as the album is out. So and that's only been a few weeks.
Yeah, so that process has already started for you then, huh?
Yeah, yeah, slowly starting now.
Wow, all right. So I know that some artists would consider themselves introverts by nature, and they, I don't know if you consider yourself an introvert or not, but I always find it fascinating that they are like that, but then really the only way to sort of express themselves is to perform in front of thousands of people or hundreds of people, or have their face and their name and their image kind of out in the public domain so much. I think that's a really interesting sort of dichotomy. Do you struggle with that, or is that has not really been an issue for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely needed to discover a way to cope with that part of it all. Like when I started publishing my music, I didn't really like I like a part of the attention. Like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a craving for some kind of attention, but it's not like this, like needing to. It's less about the ego than I thought it was. So um, I like playing in front of people and I like connecting with people, but there are certain parts of it that I really struggle with. And there's like the social media aspect where you need to kind of present yourself as a person or present yourself as a likable human, which is in my nature just as a kind of people pleaser. So, but um, yeah, I don't know. Like I've definitely developed a more extroverted version of myself with my job. And before I started doing this, I was definitely an introvert, and I still am. But yeah,
No, that's good. Yeah, that's really interesting. All right, so I want to talk about the new album, but first and foremost, I know this has been out a number of years, but I need to ask you because anytime you do something or something happens related to you that's a million of something is incredible, right? Means a lot. You've got a song that has hit like 82 million streams. It's called Forest Fires, and it came out I think I don't know 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even longer, but yeah, that's something. I guess obviously with that, sort of begets more attention and more limelight. At what point did you sort of understand that that was going to have a different reaction with listeners? Right? Did it hit a million, and you're like, okay, this is weird, or was it 50,000 or 500,000, or do you remember the moment where you're like, okay, this might actually have legs that are different than anything else that you've done?
yeah. I mean, I was kind of lucky with the fact that like Forest Fires was like my first official release. Or not lucky, but I released a few like self-recorded things before Forest Fires, and I started getting attention for it immediately. Like I guess my voice and my kind of songwriting was very playlist oriented, so I got like a few 100,000 on some songs that I released. But then, but that was all self-recorded and different. And so, like when I started working with the manager, and we went into, and he like helped me pay for the studio to record the Forest Fires EP. We went to the studio, recorded it properly, and then it was like, okay, now I'm gonna release music as an official artist because I'm in the system. I'm working with some people. I have some help, and this is the first release we released. And I remember having like this feeling toward this song before we released it, because this wasn't supposed to be the first single. Another song on the EP was supposed to be the first single, but then when we recorded this, it was like immediate, like no, 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 this is the beginning. This is the bang we start with. And and we started just releasing it on SoundCloud because I we didn't like Spotify wasn't really in Iceland at that point. We kind of just had like, oh, what's the first step? Yeah, let's just put it out on SoundCloud. And I don't even remember why we did it, because I had released a few things on Spotify. I think it was just kind of a safer thing to. I really don't remember why we did it like this, but we just put it on SoundCloud, and it generated like a million streams in a month, or something, and it was crazy. Like it just like I remember the first day that we released it, I got 1,000 streams, and I was like, "What the hell is this? This is crazy!" In the first day, and then the second day it was 2,000 streams, and then the third day it was like 5,000, and then it just evolved every day more and more and more, and more people started talking about it, and I was like, is this making it? I don't know. So yeah, it was totally weird, and then we decided to release it on Spotify, or maybe we did like no, I cannot recall it. I cannot go back to it. I really can't remember, but we released it on Spotify, and the same thing happened with Spotify. The streams just came up, and I didn't have like in Spotify for Artist insights, so I couldn't look at the daily thing. I just had to like look at when Spotify refreshed it, and it even went up like 50,000 one day, and like, and I stopped looking at that point because I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Congrats on that. And yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, 82 million. That's a big number. you know, that's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
uh, that's something. So, well, hopefully you'll have more success like that and more recognition, especially from this new album. So the new album was released earlier this summer. It's called "Away from This Dream," and I have a couple. I want to talk about a couple of the songs, obviously, but what's interesting about the title is again, it's a sort of a dichotomy, right? It's away from a dream, and usually you want to say, okay, away from a nightmare. You want to move away from a nightmare. But what is
yeah.
what is that? What is that concept about, and what's the dream that you're referring to?
Yeah, I think the dream that I am referring to is kind of a mix between something that I, as a person, am always trying to seek out for. Like the dream of today might be to release or write the most perfect song, but the overall dream for me as a person is to be an artist and look at myself in the limelight and be proud of what I'm putting out. And the dream is to be accomplished enough to be able to fund my life with being an artist and writing music and producing music and people and like and that comes back to kind of this extroverted introverted type of thing, because to be able to maintain this hobby as a job, I have to get money for it, and that's the hard part, because like in a way being an artist is such an amazing position to be in, where you have fans that pay for your music, but they're not like buying a burger from you. They're not paying to your business. They're buying an album from you. They're getting a product that they will uh, hopefully have in their hands forever. So it's such a weird kind of being able to be personal with somebody's work, and same with visual art and all that. But it's such a specific thing, but we also are evolving into a time where it's becoming a thing everyone wants for free. At least like choose when to support an artist. Like I want to buy an album from this artist because I already decided that I'm a fan, but not before, I don't want to spend like. So the subscription system is amazing for that, because you're able to discover millions of artists without spending so much money. And but it's kind of killing, or like it's kind of yeah, it's making the uh, yeah, it's making what's the word, yeah, possibilities and kind of are limited for smaller artists, I guess. But then also at the time of social media and everybody is there, kind of it's becoming more important to be a good business person than a good artist in terms of that, like and so um, to answer your question about the dream, I guess the title of the album is kind of been my internal conversation of like, should I keep trying to be a business person? Because like I want to be an artist, but then the more I want to be an artist, the more I know that I need to be a good business person with good business decisions, and that sometimes is a very struggle. It's like it's a struggle for me to kind of maintain that attitude, because it's killing my joy for like the thing that I love the most. So I really have that internal conversation all the time, and I wrote this album about that. And but the kind of the more metaphorical term of the album is also just like a relationship, and kind of the inner doubts about your own emotions and my emotions, especially in my young 20s, because I kind of wrote it about like the last 5-8 years of my life and relationships I've been through and in, and kind of how something like a relationship was a dream, and it was something that I really wanted to be in. Then as soon as, and then I didn't want it anymore, and kind of the struggles with internal doubt in that regard.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's a great answer. I think like I have so much respect for people like you that put themselves out there, basically open themselves up right to the world, and then you're sort of, yeah, you're dependent on people liking it, but also believing in it and believing in you and believing in the words, and having that emotional connection, and that's like you're kind of out there on a ledge. That's got to be a,
Yeah.
maybe not terrifying, but that's got to be a wild position to be in. And I hope that you've got the confidence, again, based on Forest Fires and based on all the other songs and all the other albums that you've released, that there is that connection is building, and that you don't have second thoughts about, well, the easy thing to do would be to have a 40-hour week, or 9 to 5 job, office job, and I'll just do the music as a side hustle or something. I hope that's not in the cards, because you deserve to be an artist like that. That's what you are, right?
Thanks, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because it is the introvert extrovert tension, and it's the artist and the business tension. I think those two are sort of related.
Yeah,
They're different, but they're related, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm every day like kind of talking with my manager about how to kind of focus more on the art side, and for the business world to take more. Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard when you're a solo artist and you have to be involved in it all, you know. But I'm not complaining. Like, it's just life.
Well, no, and your name's on it, right? Your name's on the album. Your name's
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
the product at the end of the day, and so you've got to be involved. You don't want to. I wouldn't think you'd want to outsource everything, So, which I know like takes a lot of
no,
effort, but yeah. Well, cool. All right. So away from the stream, a really interesting context, and I think I saw somewhere where you started with basically 30 kind of songs or demos that were kind of morphed and evolved into like the final 10 or so. I guess was that an easy process? Did the 10 naturally emerge from the other 20?
yeah. I think like yeah, I had like a very clear plan with the demo process of this album. I've never jumped into something like this with such a clear, like with the first record. I kind of wrote the songs during the releases of the EPs that I released before. So it was a collection of songs that I've written over a period of 8 years. So, and then I had like 7 or 8 songs, and then I wrote a five to be on top of that with the first record. With this one, I really went at first into kind of writing the album, and I wanted the album to kind of live in the same time as well from just the get go. So I had this plan of writing 50 songs that I would choose the best 10 of, and I had this plan of like doing more uh, like I had this plan of doing like a few EPs before the album would come out and stuff like that. But then in the process, of course, like with everything, I create this plan, and then I'm open for it to change when I started working with my current manager, and she started to listen to the demos, and we kind of developed a plan together to go just straight into the album, because it felt like the right thing to do when these songs started um, coming around. And when I had hit 30 songs, we kind of figured out that I had the album in my hands. I just needed to then work those songs a bit further, rather than trying to find more songs to work with, and it would just make the decision more difficult, especially because I had 10 songs at that point, and I wanted to release a 10-song album. So yeah, it wasn't difficult because I had such a. I mean, I definitely had days where I was writing something that was not getting there, and I like everything. Like when I spent the time, so much time in the studio, I get tunnel vision, and I started becoming grumpy because I'm not eating enough between uh, hours of writing, and I start kind of focusing so much on the work that I stop becoming a person. And I yeah, it's very weird when when I'm so deep in the work, I just stop listening to my body's needs. And I especially with my studio, I don't even have windows, so I don't even have like oxygen coming into the room.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, so the 10 is the 10, which, and we'll talk about a couple. And you mentioned earlier that you've already kind of started on working on kind of the next project, right? Like that's how you work and that's how your brain works. Will that next project include any of the 20 that didn't make the album, or will you just say, listen, that those served a purpose and I'm just going to put those to the side?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I didn't choose them for a reason, and I'm not a big recycler. Like, it haven't recycled old unreleased material a lot, because I love the feeling of like starting something new. It might have, if I like something about song, it might have like a reference to it, or there's a lyric bit, or there's like a little bit of a Frankensteining going on. But I am a bit like, I like to write the song from start to finish in one session, and then uh, get back to it and write, and then I kind of know if I'm going to release that song or not in that moment.
Well, interesting. Well, as a fan, I think I'll just tell you, like, if I love an artist and love what they've done, I'm always craving anything and everything that they've ever So like I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure at some point there might be a reason for you to like, oh yeah, there was those few songs I didn't do for away
Yeah,
from this dream. I know your fans would love
100%.
that at some point.
Yeah, and that's also why kind of it lives in that world, and I'm sure there will be a time to do something with these songs, but I don't want to look at it for the next project. I'd rather than keep it too attached to that in a way.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. All right, well, just a couple questions on a few of them. So, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna ask you about one, and if you could give me the context, and I've got some of the lyrics and stuff. I just wanted to ask you about it. So,
Okay.
there's a song here I want to ask you about. It's called "Wash It Away." What is that? What is that about? And what's interesting is you hear a lot about people and anxiety, and I don't know if this is about the song, but like anxiety and overthinking and just those different topics. It's probably the chorus or something. Is it happening now, or is it my overthinking? I can't really tell if you're really sinking. So I keep it all to myself until it's too
Hmm.
late. I wait on the moment, but the moment's a blur. So I leave my head out on the curb, but the rain won't wash it away. That's
Hmm.
good. Those are good lyrics, Axel. What's
Thank
the
you, thank you,
yeah?
thank you, man.
What's the context?
Yeah, I think it's just I think it's the doubts. There's always doubts attached to my emotions, and when I'm feeling frustrated with somebody, or if I'm feeling any kind of emotion, I tend to live with it, and sometimes a bit too long before I say it out loud. And this is just about like this. Yeah, it's about like um, about this, yeah, the situation. I might be feeling something, and I don't know if it is, if the problem is in the situation and the problem is in what the person is doing that is frustrating me, or is it because I'm not in a good shape or a good mood, and am I just overthinking this entirely? So it's just about like, because I have this moment so often with people around me, that I doubt my own needs and wishes, so I tend to take it on myself then, and maybe and then I get like hurt, or I sacrifice my own. And this has happened a lot in my early relationships, where the relationship just got destroyed because of my actions in this. I didn't contribute to the relationship in communication. So, and that is because of exactly this moment. I put the thought aside, and I don't pay attention to it, and it will get back to me eventually, because it won't leave just because I don't do anything with it. So yeah.
Wow, yeah. I guess as an artist in your late 20s, and someone that could travel, are relationships difficult just because of what you do, or is it have you struggled because it's hard for you to communicate, or it's hard for you to kind of demand what you want in a nice way, from the people that you're with?
Yeah, I think there's like a starting point in every relationship where there's a requirement that, like, the only way that this will work is that the person is okay with my job. Because of course, if I have to bicker about every time I go on tour, that would just not be sustainable for anybody. So it's always a bit of a conversation in the beginning of every relationship. And sometimes people think they can take it more than they actually can, and so you have to go through that process as well. And so yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily more difficult than being anything else, because there's definitely there's always like this respect for what you do as well, which I don't think you get in every job. Being an artist, especially because I usually tend to get attracted to people that are interested in artists in general, and then if they're interested in artists, they're interested in being with an artist. So there's always like this. I think people are, at the same time as I am, I'm doing that thing where I'm putting my emotions aside. I think they're doing that same thing as well, because it's just that important for them that the artist is pleased, which is not necessarily a healthy thing all the time, but then you just have to have a conversation about that as well.
So one of my favorites is called "Don't Wait for Summer." This is the one that I think is sort of on repeat for me in terms of it's the this is Axel Flóvent playlist on Spotify, and I keep coming back to "Don't Wait for Summer." What's the context for that? And then I have a question about a couple of the lyrics.
Yeah, I think the terminology that I'm using in that song is like right now it's 14th of July, and we've had 3 days in a row where it's horrible weather and rainy, and we don't get much more than 15 degrees Celsius, which I don't need what no what's Fahrenheit in that, but we don't get a lot of sunny days. So when there are sunny days, there's tend to be like this. Okay, now I have to use the sun, and I have to do all of these things that I wanted to do, and I want to write this song about seizing the day and kind of seizing the moment, and not wait for the perfect day to clear up to do all the things that you want to do, which I feel like is a reoccurring thing in my life as well. Just to be like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna do that until the right time is for it. So it's a kind of a self reminder to not think that there's ever a perfect moment, because also for writing, I think sometimes you're waiting for the inspiration to hit, or like that moment, and it's so important to go and do the thing and let it come to you in a way, and it doesn't do that while you're doing something else. So yeah.
Part of the song you talk about something's in the water. That's something that comes kind of keeps coming back. I guess what's that a reference to?
Yeah, I think it's just in general, like this feeling of you can feel that something's happening, and so like something's bubbling, and you're working on something, and always this kind of moment of hope that the thing that you want to change is on the horizon, and yeah, it's just that terminology, I guess.
Yeah, and the other one is honesty. So the lyrics I'd like to read. This is actually pretty honest, and this what I wanted to ask you too about your songwriting is sort of this idea of literal versus artistic,
Mm,
which I'll come back to. But to me, this is it feels fairly literal. But you say, do you know what
yeah.
makes you burn again? All the things that drive you somewhere you can sleep instead. Does it make you want to love again? Are you choosing now to be alone with someone you can't stand? Always cutting your honesty, always neglecting your honesty. All right, so that's that cuts right to it. What's the context of that song? And then is it literal? Is that feels very literal and feels very personal.
Yeah, I think it's you see a lot of relationships that of people around you, especially in the older generations, that are either like people that just don't want to be alone, and rather want to be with a person that they actually hate than being alone. Like it's hard to be alone in this world, and both financially and also just to sit on the sofa alone. You're not doing anything special, but just having another person breathing the same air as you can sometimes feel safer and better, even though you cannot stand anything that that person says. So it's just yeah, very literal, painting that picture. And then it's also about kind of choosing not to be in a relationship, like and choosing rather to be actually alone. And then yeah, and this kind of codependency, people pleasing thing of neglecting your honesty, neglecting every emotion that you have, because you don't want to like you don't want to move the current um, in any way, so
Well, so for someone your age to sort of recognize that and be able to put that on paper, that's pretty incredible. I guess have you seen a lot of that just in relationships in your circle or in your network? Because it's spot on,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I think it's something I've always lived through, also just because my mom and dad split up when I was 4, and my mom has chosen to be alone ever since. So it's really a reference to her life and kind of our conversations about how she is perfectly happy alone, and then everybody bugging her, all her kind of, since she decided to do that, bugging her about like, oh, she has to find a man, and she's like, no, I'm content, I'm happy to be alone. And she doesn't want to, because she also is such a people pleaser, that if she would go into another relationship, she would just become a servant. You know, that's her kind of, it's also her love language. So it's kind of hard to, you know, you how can you at 50 something or 60 find a man who will not become the person that will just say yes to everything that you're served. You know, you have to find somebody that says, no, I stop doing that thing, I'm gonna do it, which you can really find in that generation. It's at least very hard. You know, you have to develop that relationship with time. So it's the, like, we talk about it so much, so it's definitely in the lyric of honesty, and it's
Oh, that's awesome.
and
I was in that grade, and you think about, okay, is there a better path? And that lack of confidence, and the fear of being alone, even
Yeah.
if certain moments are miserable, you're like, okay, I'd rather
yeah,
like endure this than
yeah,
the thought of the unknown, and whatever that looks
yeah.
like, right? And so, and I think, yeah, and I think it's too bad, and I think a lot of that in America is sort of driven by sort of this religious um current that a lot of Americans grew up with, where like divorce really isn't an option. There's a lot of pressure
Mm.
around, you find somebody that you're with them forever, and I think that's been an unfortunate thing, because people change, relationships evolve, and having that pressure of kind of sticking through it, it's not beneficial for anybody, the
Mm.
partners and the kids and
Agree.
everybody. So yeah, like when I heard this song and saw.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's definitely like, yeah, the most basic, just physical touch, and being able to be physically close, and but then also um I'm still just figuring it out, I think, with yeah,
Will have
life.
the same love language forever, but I think that also can evolve. It's just depending on the relationship. So, no,
yeah.
that's good. I guess. Um, well, the opposite of that, I was curious. So and this is probably like picking children, right? But what's the one that best represents, the time frame of when you wrote the songs and created the album? What's the one that is the best representative of that time in your life?
Uh, that's a really good. I think it might, like, for me, it might be the first that we figured out when the sun goes down. Like, I think and it kind of has all of the elements that I wanted to uh, push for the record. But my favorite song is Honesty. And honestly, actually, I think it's the first song that and being and of the demos.
Yeah, interesting. Okay,
So,
literal or more artistic and metaphorical in the songwriting, or do you kind of bounce back and forth? Like if you look at the 10 songs here, without going through each one, is it a mix, or is it weighted more towards one of those things or the other?
Yeah, I play. I like to have a play on the both things, and I guess that's also the way. Like with the title "Away from the Stream" being kind of literally about my relationship with being an artist, but then again, I don't think that's not a fascinating story in that sense. Like I don't think that's a fascinating thing to write about. So I need to have like a layered meaning behind that title, and I think that's how I like to work in a literal way. Like there are songs like Honesty that are not really metaphorically about anything else that I'm writing about, because I think the topic is just metaphorical enough. Like it makes you think. It's not like, oh, I love you in the sunset. It's not a sentence about something that's so shallow and surfacely that doesn't make you think. Like I love to write about things that I am like having a struggle with, and then I feel like that's kind of a metaphor enough. And then I have sentences in songs like Moonlight that is, I want you here with me now. And for me, that can mean so many different things in my life. Like it can be like, yeah, for me, like I like to write very simple sentences that I like to sing over and over again with different meanings. And I think that's, yeah, I think that's that's the mix that I love.
What's interesting about you is that you've got this constant sort of polarities, you know, the introvert, extrovert, the artist, the business. In songwriting, it's the same thing, the literal and the artistic. Yeah, I think that's probably why your sound and your art is so interesting, right? That's just me not knowing anything about music, but just being a huge fan
You,
of
man.
not just you, but of you know, music in general. So that's that's a cool tension. All right, so what I want to do, and I'm sure you're might be tired of Americans asking about Iceland and what that means, and but I think what's really interesting, I love when artists sort of honor and reflect their home, you know, and whether that's Texas, whether that's South Africa, whether that's, you know, Iceland. But there was a quote you did I think it was a video that you shot in Amsterdam around forest fires, which is the song that we started talking about, and you had a really interesting quote before you started playing, like on a street corner. You said, the fact that I come from a country that doesn't have too many people has definitely an impact on my writing and my music, because you're always listening, and when you're always listening to quiet or nothing, you get inspired of nothing. I thought that was beautiful, right? So tell us about that. Like, tell us about how much, you know, the fact that you were born there, raised there, most of your life. How has that inspired and sort of impacted you as an artist?
Yeah, I think it's funny to think about. It's like Iceland is like there are so many reasons why I have become the artist that I am, and I always I don't want to like yeah, I wouldn't be if I was from anywhere else. I think it's like I'm from a very small town that wasn't like, it had a lot of musicians at the time when I was growing up, because the music community in my hometown of Husavik was really vibrant for a few years. And I am able to kind of start bands, write music with my friends, and start playing concerts. And my uncle taught me how to play guitar. My brother is a musician. Like there's this like, this kind of there was like this attitude toward music that was really nice, and it was kind of like the community was very small, but it was still like big enough to be something in such a small place, you know. And we could play in like schools, we could play in like different places and kind of create venues around in Husavik, and call it a venue, and call it a concert. And that is something that I think only happens in small communities. You know everybody, so you're able to kind of do that at 13, at 12 years old. There's not it's not very hard. But then there's the nature aspect of it, and then there's the nothingness aspect of it, that is just also like, I remember having this idea at 14 to do, like I started writing my solo music at 14, 15, and I was like, oh, I can do this. My brother has been doing my brother has been in millions of bands and doing solo work at the same time, and I always like thought that was quite cool, and that was very inspiring for me to have somebody that was doing exactly what I want to do. And I mean, I also figured it out through him. Huge inspiration in every way, you know. And um, and this kind of, I had this music video idea at 15 of walking in the isolated forest, just me with the camera. It was a stupid video, very not so nice. Um, but still like I could do that because there was no one around, but if there was somebody around, I would, with my introverted head, be very afraid of be doing something like that and kind of stumbling upon anybody. I could do that because I just knew that nobody would be there. I could just go to a place where there was nobody and I would just be there doing that thing. I don't think if you live in a place where there's lots of people everywhere, you can rely on a place where nobody would be there, unless you like live in a small village in America as well, where there's nobody around. You probably have that idea as well. But I think Iceland has also created like enormous amount of um, confidence in me as an artist because of artists like Sigurós, Björk, of Monsters and Men, Kaleo, like Ásgeir, all of these huge inspirations throughout my um, from like 10 years old to 20. I remember seeing those artists explode in front of me, and they were from Iceland, and there was always this attention on the country. And I remember, wow, that is like I already have that as a currency as an artist. Like if I release music and I start getting attention, people not only like me for my music, but also especially with Americans, because still to this day, America gives credit to Icelandic artists being from Iceland. They love it. They are so interested in it, and they love this little island of ours, and we love it. Like we love this attention and this kind of light that we get for that. And then, yeah.
Well, I guess one final question, and it seems like you're very curious by nature, but at this point, with the music that you've created, all the music that you want to create, the places you've lived and traveled, like what are you most curious about today in the middle of 2024?
Yeah, I think I'm most curious about finding a way to live in a capitalized society without it controlling my every move. There's like I have so many kind of needs to evolve as a person, both financially and creatively and everything. And it's always attached to something. Like it's attached to owning a better space, owning a more beautiful studio, owning a house in Bali, owning an apartment. It's all about owning it, everything. And that's my evolution of thought. I'm just such a victim to this capitalized thinking, and I'm my biggest curiosity is how to kind of disassociate myself with these needs and still do the thing that I need to do to survive and live, but I don't need to own everything. And yeah, I'm really curious, just individually. Like I think, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the biggest curiosity in that. I'm not very like a political person, or like as an artist, I don't talk about my strong opinions on everything that much. Like I really am very basic as a person, and I don't try to be anything else. But I'm very curious in a lot of these things that I think are destroying the world as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit it's a bit hairy answer, but yeah.
I guess what's the rest of the year look like for you, Axel?
Just kind of looking into moving back to Husavik and writing a lot. Like I just plan to write a lot. We have a few festivals in Holland and one in Canada actually. I'm playing an Icelandic festival in Gimli, the Icelandic town in Canada. It's in the beginning of
Oh
August.
my gosh, that sounds incredible. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. I respect you so much. Your music is incredible. Like the sound, the lyrics, all of it coming together. The new album's great, and I'm a huge fan, by the way, of "You Stay by the Sea." I mean, to me, and I think of you, and I think of Iceland, all of that. I just think of you standing, or whoever you're singing about, standing over the cliffs, looking out, and that song is incredible, and all your stuff's incredible. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your summer.
Thank you so much, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Hey, this is Axel Flóvent, and this is my song, Away from This Dream. I sort of know what you're going through, but it doesn't mean I like what you said. The way I cope with it might seem like I'm fine, but I'm secretly hating every word. Is it fair to you that I won't express it? It's just the way I close down sometimes. I'm not always aware what I'm doing. Before I know how to listen when you need me, that's how it begins. When it feels like I'm fading to somewhere else, away from the street. The tunnel vision is real when I'm cold. I'm trying to hint everything that I feel it. You say you understand, but I don't. If I believe it's still quietly depending on my decency. Yeah, it's kinda given, that's why we're here. All I know how to listen when you need me, that's how it begins. When it feels like I'm fading to somewhere else, away from this. Before I know how to listen when you need me, that's how it begins. When it feels like I'm fading somewhere else, away from the street. This is Axel Flóvent, and this is my song, You Stay by the Sea. You run without your feet, touching the ground beneath. Maybe you wanna love, but you couldn't handle it. And now you speak your mind, and you get what you really saw coming. And he keeps on showing you that your eyes won't bleed as much when you stay by the sea. And your house won't need as much. With her you will see. If you hold my deepest thoughts and all the rain that falls, you believe in
scared you'll scare it all. In your mind you always know that your eyes won't bleed as much when you stay by the sea, and your house won't need as much. With her you will see. You stay by